Deadpool and Wolverine is a soulless movie, at least is what's being said online. They say it's the weakest of the trilogy with rushed pacing, messy storylines, and a lack of character growth for Deadpool. Now, I saw Deadpool and Wolverine 3 times already, and I have to somewhat disagree. There might be some flaws in this film, but there is also a deeper meaning that the film explores, and I'm just not talking about Deadpool finding purpose, but another meaning that I haven't seen others mention yet that leaves me appreciating this film for tackling at least. Now, this film wears its message on its sleeve. Deadpool wants to matter, and Wolverine wants to return to the past to be there for his fellow X-Men. Ryan Reynolds and director Sean Levy create the story with Quicksilver-like pacing to its max potential without wasting a second of showing fans what they always wanted to see. With that comes certain sacrifices, like those heartfelt emotional beats like Deadpool confessing to Happy about needing the Avengers in order to matter, and Hugh Jackman's moment as Wolverine talking to grown X-23 about the reason why he's considered the worst Wolverine. The pacing allows the film to not slow down too much to where it feels like the emotional scenes are sluggish to get through, but in exchange for a quicker pace, it takes away alternative creative choices to really elevate a scene. For example, Wolverine's monologue about the tragedy of his world would have connected for me more if we were visually able to see this. Now, I'm sure for budget reasons they couldn't do it, but a flashback scene of Wolverine walking through the mansion and seeing the members of his team defeated would have hit me more to the heart, because I can see what Wolverine sees when he's speaking. Instead, the writers rely on using popular names we've heard throughout the decades of film and television to fill in the blanks of these members, which is good for nostalgia purposes, but film is visual media. It would have been great to see. Plus, it would have allowed for more nerdy fan castings that he wanted to go down that route. Imagine Britton Thwaites, the Nightwing from the Titans live-action show, as Cyclops, or Keke Palmer or Rosario Dawson as Storm. It could also just be unknown actors in the costumes to keep the budget low, but any option that allowed us to see Wolverine's X-Men would have been better received to me than just a speech. In terms of cameos, Deadpool and Wolverine waste no time showing alternative realities of characters. They had Chris Evans as Human Torch, and that was a great callback, along with who Deadpool meets as the others. Elektra, Wesley Snipes' Blade, and a chronically online reference Channing Tatum as Gambit. Now, the cameos are best suited when it's story-based, like Spider-Man No Way Home with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, that heavily involved with the story's progression. This allows Deadpool and Wolverine's cameos to have a layer of importance instead of background Easter eggs like Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness and DC's The Flash. Wesley Snipes' Blade was welcoming to see, and even had a controversial line that had Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool looking at the camera like, ooh. Now, Gambit was a standout cameo, not just because it's a reference to something only heavy social media users like myself are aware of, but he played the part incredibly well. Even if people weren't that fond of his accent, his back-to-back jokes about his birth had my theater roaring with the laughter, and it was honestly the funniest joke in the movie. The humor in this movie, by the way, is interesting. The jokes mostly land for me, besides a Gen Z joke at Cassandra Nova by Deadpool. Not because I feel offended or anything like that, just seemed like it was something forced as a meta joke instead of a genuine poke at something the character does. For example, Deadpool jokes about Gambit's dialect and accent multiple times in this film, and I found all the jokes hilarious because it was something attached to the core of the character. That's how I felt about some of the jokes in this film. It had way more pop culture references than I expected. Don't get me wrong, pop culture jokes are fine, but this causes the film to be more dated than Deadpool 1 in my opinion. Now, I wasn't aware of Hugh Jackman's divorce, but when it was mentioned in the movie, my theater was dead silent. And of course, my theater isn't the metric for global audience members, but the point is that I wasn't alone in not understanding the joke until I searched it up for this review. Humor is objective, and I expect some people to find some of that funny and others won't. But Deadpool and Wolverine found a way to do humor in a way we rarely see, and that's the soundtrack. This movie's soundtrack had me concerned at first, especially the opening scene with Bye 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 by NSYNC. Now, I wondered why not go for a bass-heavy instrumental, because sometimes lyrical songs during an action sequence can be a hit or miss, depending on the song, right? People have attachments to certain songs with particular memories, so a popular song overlaying an action scene, if done wrong, can tune out the audience. Deadpool and Wolverine don't have that problem because as soon as the chorus hits, Deadpool is smacking a TVA agent to the rhythm and it just creates this humorous tone. Now, when I listen to that NSYNC song, I'll only be thinking about Deadpool's opening sequence. That's the purpose of a soundtrack, to elevate a scene, and the creative nature of taking on some popular pop songs throughout the film worked beautifully for me. And not only was the soundtrack working, but also the messy storylines in the film. Now, personally, I don't see it as messy. The switch from Mr. Paradox being the main bad to Cassandra Nova felt seamless and a logical leap in the story progression, as Cassandra only became the bigger problem because Paradox got greedy and broke their agreement. It was a good creative choice for the MacGuffin in the film, the Time Reaper, to be the one to essentially defeat Cassandra Nova instead of writing a contrived reason for why Deadpool and Wolverine could defeat someone who was able to beat Magneto one-on-one. With that said, there were two major issues I had with the story's logic. Deadpool and Wolverine are fighting the Deadpool core. After defeating them, the Deadpools regenerate and try to run it back before Peter Pool shows up and causes a distraction so Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool and Wolverine can escape. Peter Pool showing up isn't the issue. The reason for why the Deadpool core stopped is the problem. The Deadpool core makes it clear that Peter in every universe is essentially a rock-solid sidekick. Since all of them like Peter Pool, how is that a reason for all the Deadpool core to ignore their mission and focus on Peter Pool? They all have one, so what makes this universe so different? It probably would have been better if Peter did a heroic sacrifice in all of their worlds, so the other Deadpools wanted to fight over this Peter to have that longtime sidekick back. You would now have a multiversal lore and a logical reason for Deadpool core to ignore Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool. A similar issue happens for the ending. This is when humor for me goes too meta that it hinders the story. Paradox tells Deadpool and Wolverine they can't survive because of the chemicals of the Time Ripper, but both of them still go and prevent Cassandra Nova from achieving her goal. After it's all over and Paradox wonders how they're still alive, Deadpool explains that having Madonna in the background while Deadpool and Wolverine are holding hands was enough to stop the Time Reaper. Some people I discussed with in the theater were fine with it because the tone of the film is very lighthearted, so it's not a big deal. If you feel that way, then that's completely fine. For me, I just didn't like how it was an obvious cop-out because the writers went too big in scale that the only way out was a meta joke. Meta jokes work for me, but to resolve obstacles in the story is when it gets a little much for me. Another cop-out I noticed was Deadpool's character arc. I had to go back and re-watch the older Deadpool movies because I needed to confirm my thoughts. Vanessa in this film says Wade needs to stop thinking about himself, but Deadpool 2 was all about Deadpool stopping Cable from killing a kid, because Wade believed that the child could change and not go down the villain path we saw in the future. It seemed like Sean Levy and Ryan Reynolds wanted to create some emotional arc to provide a reason for why Deadpool is doing all of this, and to be honest, you didn't need to. Deadpool didn't need a character arc. A flat arc like in action movies and shown in anime like Goku and Dragon Ball Z could have worked just fine. Now, it felt like they had to reverse Deadpool's character to make the story work instead of taking what you have and going deeper with it. It does make me wonder how the trilogy will feel when you watch them together. Even though the character arc is questionable, there was an explored theme that Deadpool and Wolverine did that left me impressed. As the story's theme was about relevance and finding purpose in your life, I believe if you look at this on a macro level, it's the celebration and funeral of the Fox Marvel era. The movie provides a meta theme of the Fox universe need for relevance and impact, just like Deadpool needed the Avengers during his conversation with Happy. But Happy correctly says that people need Avengers, not the other way around. Paradox tells Deadpool that he can go to a universe and actually matter, instead of slowly becoming irrelevant as the decades continue while the sacred timeline flourishes. But Deadpool's takeaway at the end is that as long as you focus on the people that support you and appreciate you, the need of approval from others doesn't matter. The Fox franchise has been the punching bag for many years. Yes, it has films that may not click for people, but it also took bold risks that hopefully people can look back and appreciate on. The Fox movies have a purpose and impact in the comic book movie landscape. And without the Fox universe, will we have seen Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool have a trilogy? Or a 2-decade-long run of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, or get excited at Patrick Stewart's appearance in Multiverse of Madness? All I'm saying is, don't forget to give 20th Century Fox your flowers for all the memories they gave us. You can also give your flowers to the channel by checking out my recent video about why we need a Wonder Woman Souls-like video game and what should be in it.